Okay, let's dive in.
Oh,
We've all been there, right?
yeah.
Kneeling in the garden, wrestling with that one plant that just won't quit. That green thing we call a weed.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally, in gardening, farming, a weed is basically defined by what it takes. Nutrients, water, light. It's the bad guy.
It really is seen that way. But today we're doing a deep dive into some really fascinating notes compiled by quite an experienced botanist, also a gardener.
Okay.
And our mission really is to see how this source material challenges that whole idea, that antagonism. We want to explore how these notes kind of reframe the weed.
From just being pesky.
Exactly. From just a competitor to maybe something, well, recognized as a vital contributor, part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And crucially, maybe an indicator of what's going on with your soil.
Yeah, and what immediately jumped out at me looking through these notes was the sheer scientific curiosity the observer has for these wild plants. They write about how these things thrive, how they spread, all with basically zero help from us. It really sets things up for a compelling question, doesn't it? What if these things we fight so hard against are actually, trying to tell us something valuable?
A signal.
So the standard view, the one most of us have when we, go by mulch or weed killer, it's actually laid out in the notes too, even as the observer starts to argue against it.
Okay. And that view is simple. These invasive weeds, they're unwanted because they compete aggressively for water, for nutrients, everything. They take away from the plants we actually want there, like our flowers or herbs. That competition mindset is, it's really baked into how we garden, how we farm. We see it as, a battle. If the weed wins, my tomato loses.
Right, a zero-sum game.
But the observer here really pivots hard. And that's the core aha moment in these notes, I think. They argue that if you only see competition, you're missing, well, the contribution side of the ledger.
Contribution, okay.
Yeah, instead of just pests, the notes catalog these wild plants as serving critical beneficial purposes. It's a total flip in perspective. The weed isn't just surviving, maybe it's offering a service. One you didn't ask for, maybe, but might actually need.
And this isn't just theory, is it? It gets specific. The notes focus on one particular plant as the sort of case study for this shift. It's the Purple Cleome.
That's the one. Or Cleome rutidosperma, if we're being precise.
Cleome rutidosperma. Got it. And it wasn't just watching it grow in the wild either. The notes are really detailed about how the observer collected a sample.
Actively collected it.
And grew it indoors. To test how it performed in different soils, different types of plastic pots even. That shows real scientific interest, not just casual observation.
That's such a key detail, isn't it? When someone invests that kind of effort, studying a common weed with the same, rigor you'd use for a prized rose, it signals that they think this plant has value. They're not just pulling it, they're putting it under the microscope, almost literally.
Right.
And through that study, the observer breaks down why. The three distinct, really practical benefits that justify rethinking our whole, war on weeds approach. For this plant, at least.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to stop thinking enemy and start thinking maybe unpaid helper. Let's walk through those three benefits because this is where it gets really practical for you, the listener.
Absolutely. So the first big one identified is ecological support.
Okay.
The notes really emphasize that allowing these plants, even in controlled ways, makes them sort of foundational for the local food web. They're incredibly beneficial for insects.
Specifically pollinators, right? Like bees and butterflies.
Exactly. Bees, butterflies. They rely on the flowers for nectar, for pollen, especially sometimes when our main garden flowers aren't blooming. These plants fill the gaps.
So the Purple Cleome is like a crucial pit stop on the pollinator highway.
You could say that. And the notes connect the dots further. They don't just stop at insects.
Okay. What else?
Well, they explicitly state that supporting these insect populations, in turn, supports the birds that prey on those insects.
Right, the food chain.
Yeah. So by leaving a patch of this plant we'd normally just rip out, we're essentially helping build a more complex, more resilient local ecosystem. It's habitat creation, plain and simple, something we often forget when we're just focused on our own plants.
Okay, that makes sense. Ecological support. What's the second benefit? I think this is the one that feels most, immediately useful for anyone working the soil. The role as soil indicators.
This is potentially game-changing knowledge, I think. Weeds as reliable, natural signs of what's happening underground.
How so?
Well, the notes argue that the type of weed thriving in a spot isn't random. It's a diagnostic tool. It can point to specific underlying issues. For instance, if this Purple Cleome rutidosperma is really taking over an area.
Yeah. It might be signaling one of two things. Either the soil is really low on nutrients, basically only the toughest plants can survive there, or the opposite problem, that spot is poorly drained.
Waterlogged.
Okay, hold on. Let's drill into that for a second, because that's critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I look out my window, see a ton of this purple Cleome,
Huh.
how do I know which problem it is? Is it starved soil or soggy soil?
Yeah.
Did the notes give us a clue about how to fix it?
They do offer guidance, yes. It's not just that the cleome is there, but how it's growing.
Okay.
If the plants look kind of spindly, maybe pale, small, but they're still the main thing growing, that likely signals really poor nutrient levels. So you'd think about adding compost, maybe nitrogen.
Needs food.
But if the cleome looks really lush, green, dense, and it's maybe in a spot that stays wet after rain, that points more towards poor drainage, water logging. You'd need to think about improving aeration, maybe adding sand or perlite, or even addressing grading issues.
Wow.
So the plant isn't just waving a flag, it's telling you the color of the flag by how healthy it looks.
That's a big shift. We spend money on soil test kits, right?
Yeah.
And the notes are saying nature provides this instant visual free diagnostic right there.
Yeah.
It almost feels like pulling that weed is like destroying evidence.
It certainly gives you pause before you start yanking, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the third essential benefit is more physical protection. It's about their roots. Erosion control.
Exactly. Think about bare soil, especially on slopes or areas that get heavy rain or wind. You lose that precious topsoil so easily. The root systems of these tough plants, the ones we label weeds, often go deep or spread wide. They act like a net, an anchor. The observer really emphasizes how this ground cover prevents that valuable microbe-rich topsoil from just washing or blowing away.
So they're like nature's landscape fabric, basically.
A living landscape fabric. Simple, cheap, and effective.
Okay, so let me try and recap this part for you, the listener. This knowledge basically transforms the Purple Cleome. It's not just a competitor anymore. It's a multitasker. It provides habitat, it diagnoses your soil, and it stops erosion. All in one plant. That's a great summary. And this naturally leads to the big question that comes out of these notes. If they're so useful, what do we do?
Right. The observer isn't saying, let your garden become a jungle. The philosophy isn't total surrender. It's about managed coexistence.
Okay, now this feels like the tricky part. For me, anyway, and probably for a lot of gardeners listening, managed coexistence sounds nice. But Cleome, rutidosperma, as you said, it's good at spreading. Really good.
It is. Very successful reproducer.
So if the notes say keep it around,
Mm-hmm.
where's the line? How does the observer define managed? How do I stop managed from becoming, completely overrun? That's the practical hurdle.
That's a perfectly valid concern, and the notes do address it. The observer argues these benefits are available as long as you control the growth and allow them to serve their purposes. Control isn't eradication, it's limitation.
Limitation. How?
Two main strategies suggested are timing and location. Timing means, okay, let it flower, let the pollinators use it, but then remove it before it goes to seed. That stops the massive spread.
Intervention before reproduction.
Precisely. And location control means maybe you designate certain areas, borders, pathways, maybe a patch, erodes easily where you allow these plants to grow and do their job, but you keep them out of your main vegetable beds or flower displays where they'd compete directly.
I see.
It takes more observation, maybe more precise intervention, but it's not just wholesale removal.
So the job description changes from puller to manager and observer. It's a bit more involved mentally.
In a way, yes.
More engaged.
And it's clear from the context in the notes, this deep dive into Purple Cleome wasn't just a one-off thing, was it? It fit into a larger picture of the observer's work.
That's right. This specific observation was actually part of a bigger ongoing project. They were systematically gathering and cataloging all sorts of different plant species from the local area. So less about just solving a weed problem, more about understanding the whole local flora.
Exactly. A comprehensive study of local biodiversity.
And there was that detail about why the project got paused temporarily. I thought that really highlighted the seriousness of their research.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a weekend hobbyist.
Yeah, that was interesting. The field work, the cataloging of wild plants, was put on hold for a bit, specifically because the observer was also running concurrent projects involving quite intricate seed germination experiments.
Ah, so lab work versus field work.
Right. You have this highly controlled, almost laboratory setting trying to get specific seeds to sprout under ideal conditions. And then you have the messy, uncontrolled, but highly successful life of the wild Cleome.
Juggling both sides.
And the fact that they're juggling both controlled creation and this kind of chaotic observation shows a really deep commitment to understanding how plants work from the ground up. They valued both intentionally grown plants and the accidental utility of the ones that just show up.
It really shows a dedication not just to gardening or farming, but to, like, fundamental botany. Okay, so let's try to synthesize where we've landed. We started with the common enemy, the weed. And through these detailed notes, we found this surprising triple identity for at least one of them, the purple cleome.
hmm We saw how this observer challenged that whole idea of weeds just being competitors, offering three concrete benefits: providing pollinator habitat, controlling soil erosion, and acting as a free soil test kit.
Yeah, shifting the focus from just competition to actual contribution and information.
So this brings us to a final thought, a question maybe for you to consider.
If these common, often overlooked plants like Cleome rutidosperma are providing essential feedback, environmental services, just by growing where they grow, offering information and support we often try to buy or engineer,
Yeah.
what other value might we be missing? In other things around us in our daily lives or environment, things we currently just label as unwanted or a nuisance, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This deep dive suggests maybe the most valuable information isn't always hidden. Sometimes it's right there, aggressively growing outside the window.
Perhaps it's time to pause before we pull.
Maybe less yanking, more looking. Something to consider. Until next time.